Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at part 18 from the Hercules story from Ritchie's Fabulae Faciles. So this chapter is going to be about his sixth labor, which is called the Stymphalian Birds. So like I always say in these videos, one thing I would highly encourage you to do is look these up, write the actual myths on your own so you can get a background because, Ritchie can't give you all the detail of the story, even though he does a great job of giving the overview. So I'd encourage you to look these up just so you understand the culture and kind of the story behind this. It'll really help you kind of anticipate what the story will be. Then before you dive in, you always want to make sure that you have the vocab under control. So if you have to pre-read the vocab, write down any words you don't know, look them up, do what you have to do, but really try to practice so that you feel comfortable with the vocab. That's always the first step. It's really hard to translate when you don't know what the words are. Then your next step would be to use the read and reread method. So like I always tell you, read it aloud, find a friend, someone you can read it to, whatever you have to do. And keep track of where you're getting stuck. Any words you still aren't understanding, any grammar you're not getting, write it down so that you can come back and really process it and research these things, look them up, and make sure you understand them so that on the second time when you read it again, the reread part, you feel really comfortable about what you're reading. You're not having to sort of live in your dictionary so much. And like I said, make sure you're reading the story aloud. It is a language. It's meant to be read aloud. If you can find someone in class, someone you can read it to, have them read it back to you. You always want to work on your speaking, your pronunciation, your listening skills. So when you're in that place, you feel good, we can run through it. Let's just take a look right now to see kind of what it's all about. So the story starts with this. You have post paucos dies, Hercules ad oppidum Stymphalum iter fecit. Imperaverat enim Eurystheus ut ave Stymphalides necare. So we have an accusative here, duration of time, after a few days, right? Post paucos days. So after a few days from his previous labor, right, cleaning out the stables, Hercules, he made a journey. Iter fecit is perfect tense. So he made a journey to the town, the oppidum of Stymphalis, right? Often we translate it of Stymphalis, even though it is accusative, right? So he goes to this town. And he does this because, or for enim, Eurystheus had ordered imperavera, it's pluperfect tense, Eurystheus had ordered him, right? Then we have this ood clause. It's, I think it might be the first one we've seen, and the Hercules story is going to start using these uses of the subjunctive. Now this one is an indirect command, and it hinges on the verb imperavera. So we have a verb of commanding, but we don't have a quote. So we're not entirely sure what Eurystheus actually said. We're getting a secondhand account, a report of what he commanded. This is called the indirect command, and in Latin you use the subjunctive mood to express that with an ood clause, right? So Eurystheus had ordered him. Literally, it kind of looks like it's saying, so that he might kill, kind of as one way to do it. Nekaret is an imperfect subjunctive, right? And it's the verb to kill. That he might kill the ave Stymphalides, the Stymphalian birds. Another way to do this, though, is to kind of treat it like an infinitive and just say Eurystheus had ordered him to kill the Stymphalian birds. That's another way to do it. But either way, just to process, this is a subjunctive verb, nekaret, right? Imperfect subjunctive when it's active is the infinitive with our verb endings, a T in this case. And it's because you have this indirect command. So what's so special about these verbs? Well, or about these birds, rather? Well, we see it right here. You have hai aves, rostra ainea habebant, et carne hominum vescebantur. So these birds, hai aves, right? These birds, they had rostra ainea, they had bronze beaks, right? The ainea part is the word for bronze, right? Or of bronze, made of bronze, and rostra is their beak. So they had bronze beaks. Sure, why not, right? So I guess they're a little scary, right, with these mouths they have. And they fed, right? Vescebantur, it's imperfect tense, right? But you could say they fed, and it goes with an ablative, carne, right? So they fed on the flesh, the carne, of people, right? So they eat human beings. That's what makes them so scary. They have these bronze beaks, and they eat human beings, right? So they're monsters, basically. Then we continue. You have ille postquam ad locum pervenet lacum vidit. In hoc autem lacu qui non procul erat ab oppido, aves habitaban. So ille is Hercules, he, and it's after. So after he came, pervenet, to the place, meaning to the place where the Stymphalian birds are. He saw a lacum, right? He saw a lake. So when he came to the place, he saw a lake. Then you have, however, in this lake, in hoc lacu, this lake which was not far from the city, right? Qui is the relative pronoun referring to the lake, right? It's a relative clause here. So which was not far, non procul erat, from the city, ab oppido, right? in this lake, the aves habitaban, the birds were living. So he finds out that the Stymphalian birds, they're living in a lake, right? So he has a new problem. How's he going to get to them? Then you have nulla tamen dabatur apropinquandi facultas. So we'll start right here. This is another construction that's a little interesting and worth pausing on. You have what's called a gerund. You can tell with the verb apropinquare, it's been taken and turned into a noun, basically, right? The nd gives it away, apropinquandi. That nd ending is either a gerund or gerundive, right? It's basically when you take a verb and you use it as a noun in this case. And it's describing facultas, which is a word that means approach. So what you're saying here is no approach, however. So nulla facultas, right? Or no means, rather. No means of approaching. It's a genitive gerund. So again, it's taking a verb and using it like a noun. So you're saying no means of approaching, right? The apropinquandi is genitive singular describing the facultas. No means of approaching was given. What that means is there was no way to get there, right? He couldn't approach the birds, okay? Why couldn't he approach the birds? Lacus enim non ex aqua sed e limo constitit. So he couldn't approach them because, or for, right, enim, the lake, it consisted not of water, but of mud, right? Limo, it consisted from water, or from mud technically, but you can almost think of it as genitive. So it's not a water lake, it's a mud lake. So how's he supposed to get there? Well, you have Hercules igitur, neque pedibus, neque lintre progredi potuit. So Hercules, therefore, he was able, potuit, to progress or proceed, right? There's a deponent infinitive, right? Translated actively, even though it looks like a passive infinitive. So he was able to proceed, rather. Neque is neither nor, neither on foot or by foot, nor by boat. So the idea is he can't walk across the lake because it's mud. He'll sink in, think like quicksand, and he can't take a boat out onto it because it's not water. So how is he supposed to get into the lake and kill these birds, right? That's the challenge and why it's one of his labors. Then you have ille, cum magnam partem diei frustra consumsisset, hoc conatu destitit rather, et ad vulcanum se contulit, ut auxilium ab eo peterat. So ille is he, right? It's Hercules. So when you have this temporal cum clause here. And again, this is subjunctive. So the cum clause here is using a subjunctive noun. You're saying when. Consubsisset is pluperfect subjunctive. You can tell by the isse ending, right? So when he had spent, consubsisset, when he had spent a great part of the day, magnum partem is your great part, diei is genitive of the day, frustra, in vain. So basically when he wasted a big part of the day, he stopped, destitit, literally he ceased from this is what hoc conatu means. It means from this. You could translate it, he ceased from this, or you could just say he stopped this thing, right? He stopped this attempt, this conatu, right? So he stopped this attempt and se contulit, literally he carried himself, right? He hustled, he hastened, ad vulcanum. He goes to Vulcan, the god Vulcan. Why does he do this? You have a purpose clause here. The ut is going to take another subjunctive, peteret. You have ut auxilium ab eo peteret, for the purpose of, or so that you might say. He might seek, peteret, there's your imperfect subjunctive, auxilium, help, ab eo, from him, meaning from Vulcan. So when he had already wasted a big part of the day trying to figure this out, he just gives up this attempt, right? Destitit hoc conatu. He gives up. He's like, no, I'm not going to bother with this. And he goes to Vulcan so that he might help him, right? So he's looking for help from the god Vulcan. Vulcanus, qui ab fabris maxime colebator, crepundia quae ipse ex aere fabricatus era Herculi dated. So Vulcan, then you have this side thought, who was very greatly, maxime, was cherished, colebator, right? He was kind of worshipped or cherished by smiths, fabris, right? Like blacksmiths, right? He's the blacksmith god. So Vulcan, who was very, celebrated or cherished or praised by smiths, he gave to Hercules, Hercules dated. Right? What did he give him? He gave to him crepundia, rattles. They're like noisemakers, basically. Rattles is kind of one way you translate it into English, right? Rattles, which he himself, ipse, meaning Vulcan himself, fabricatus erat, had made or had fabricated, right? Had made from bronze. So he gives Hercules these special noisemakers, these rattles, right? And you'll see why he does this in a second. So now Hercules has his special, divine tool here with which he's going to, kill these birds. So you have his, Hercules, tam acrem crepitum fecit, ut aves pateritai avolaret. There we go. So Hercules, with these, meaning with the crepundia, with the rattles, right? He made such a sharp noise, right? Tom is such, right? He made such a fierce or sharp noise that we have the result clause, right? Tom and ut is setting off this result clause, which is why we have the subjunctive avolaret, right? Which is the verb to fly away. It's an imperfect subjunctive. So he made such a loud or fierce noise with them that the terrified birds, or the birds frightened, right? Perteritai, they flew away. Right? So he goes into the lake, or he goes up to the lake, and he shakes these rattles, and the noise it makes, because they are divine, right? Vulcan made it. It's so loud and so kind of fierce or sharp that it terrifies the Stymphalian birds, and they fly away. Then you have ille autem dum avolat magnum numerum earum sagatis transfixit. So then, or however he, meaning Hercules, while they're flying away, so he makes the rattle to make them fly, while they're flying away, he pierced, transfixit, right? He pierced a great number, a magnum numerum, there's your direct object, a great number of them, earum, with arrows, sagatis. It means he shot them, right? He has his bow, he's used it a bunch before, so he just makes them come out of the trees with the rattle, right? And then he's waiting for them with a bow. It's sort of like, like a duck hunter or something calling them to fly up. Hercules does the same thing. And then he starts shooting them with his bow and arrow once he can see them, and they try flying away. So again, here we have another example of where Hercules is using a little bit of a trick, right? A little mental element to him, along with his strength, his great strength, and his sort of prowess as a warrior, right, with the bow. But he also gets some divine help, right? So we see here that he's not able to solve this puzzle without the help of Vulcan, right? Which helps. He's a demigod, so you can go to Vulcan and say, "Hey, I really need help with this," and he'll get some divine help. This is something we see demigods getting a lot of times, and no different from Hercules, right? So he gets it as well. And with this, not really a trick, but sort of like a method, right? He kills the Stymphalian birds, which everyone thought was impossible because they're in this, this lake that's made of mud and you can't reach them. Hercules figures out a way to do it. So this chapter, I would say, of all the ones we've done so far in the Hercules story, this is probably the trickiest one in terms of grammar, only because you're starting to see a lot more subjunctive, right? We saw some purpose clauses, some result clauses. We saw a cum clause in there. We even saw a gerund. These are all things that you want to pause and look up. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, when I say gerund or result clause, this would be a good time to pause, go look these up, or maybe wait until you've seen these in class so you can catch up with the grammar, because moving forward, we're going to use these a lot more often, and it's tricky if you don't know what they mean or why they're being used. It's easier to really learn this, try to get into the uses of subjunctives. What's a result clause? What's a purpose clause? And then you'll be able to recognize them a lot better. If you've done that in class, this should be good practice for you so you can, see them in context. But either way, if you have any questions at all or anything you're stuck on or you didn't understand my translation, feel free to put it in the comments below. I'd be happy to help you. But otherwise, keep at it, keep reading it, and hopefully it's getting easier as you go. Good luck.